Good morning. Able to hear me? Yes. Hope everybody will switch on your videos. Switch on your videos, and if any other group has entered, kindly leave the class. Any other class students have entered means kindly leave the class. Okay, shall we start on with our lesson today, topic today, right? Meanwhile, keep your videos properly. Purushot, your videos upside down, correct it. And quickly recollecting what we have been learning in the last class. Okay, last class, quick revision first we will do what we have learned. So last class we were learning about pollination. I said pollination is transfer of pollen grain from anther to stigma, and it is of two types. One is cross-pollination, another is called as self-pollination. Cross and self are the two types of pollinations we have discussed, and with that we have just gone through what are all the types of cross and self we have, what are all the mechanisms we have observed. Like with the self-pollination we have learned celistogamy, homogamy and incomplete dichogamy, and with cross-pollination we have learned what is gaetonogamy and what is xenogamy. I hope you are familiar with all these words, yes or no? Yes. And same way we have learned what are the mechanisms with cross-pollination, namely unisexuality and bisexuality we have differentiated, and with the bisexuality we have just learned what is protanty and what is protogyny. All those words we have just completed on that part. And today directly we will go for our next new topic, that is agents of pollination. I hope you are able to see the screen. Able to see the screen? Yes. So we have just started what is agents of pollination. So before we go, what is agents of pollination? If I'm going to say, if cross-pollination is going to take place, obviously we require the help of certain agents. Okay. For example, if a cross-pollination is want to take place, either they have to depend on air or water or insect. I call those helping hands as agents of pollination, because they are helping the plant to complete the process called as pollination. Of that category, the first one what we are going to see is, that is we have agents, means the agents are needed only for which type of pollination? Only for cross-pollination, not for self-pollination. Self-pollination generally do not require any agents. It will take place by themselves. With the cross-pollination, we have two different kinds of agents. One is called as abiotic agent and other is called as biotic agent. Abiotic means non-living agent, okay, which includes air and water. Biotic agents are the living agents, which are animals and insects. I hope you will continue, you will write along with me so that you will follow what I am saying. So abiotic factors are wind and water, and biotic factors are animals and insects. And as we know, with regard to this biotic factors, animals, we have a broad category of animals and insects which is playing an important role in our biotic factors. And if it is water pollination, water is acting as an agent, means I call it as anemophily. If water is acting like a pollinating agent, means what I should call it as anemophily. If water is going to play a role in pollination, means I should call it as hydrophily. And if animals are going to play the role, means it is called as zoophily. So what are the three types of phyllis we are going to learn? Hydrophily, anemophily and zoophily are the three types of phyllis what we are going to discuss in this part. And the first one what we are going to discuss is anemophily. Anemophily means pollination by water. So anemophily means pollination by wind or air. Pollination by wind or air is called as anemophily. Pollination by wind or air is called as anemophily. An example for that is grass, sugarcane, maize, palm are the common examples what we can quote for this anemophily. And anemophilous plants should have certain characters which are very specific to those plants. Okay, so we have listed those characters, like first inflorescence. Inflorescence means the group of flowers should have either a catkin or a spike inflorescence. If I'm going to say it is a catkin, means we have learned something like a pendulous flower. Pendulous flower we have learned, like the floral inflorescence will be hanging in the downward direction, or it should be a spike. Spike means looking like a musa, okay, which is hanging on the downward direction. So the flowers which are to be anemophilous, which are to be pollinated by wind should have the inflorescent axis hanging in the downward direction. Such a kind of inflorescence is called as a catkin inflorescence or a spike inflorescence. That is a very important word there. And the inflorescence axis should always be seen above the leaves. What is the meaning of this? If the flower is going to, the inflorescence axis is going to grow, means it should be seen just above the level of the leaves so that the flowers are visibly seen. Okay, it should be seen above the inflorescent axis for the flowers so that they can be easily pollinated. And in those flowers, generally perianth is absent, or if it is present also not well developed. So the perianth, what is perianth? Perianth is a combination of both calyx and corolla, and generally these anemophilous flowers do not have a perianth, and if just in case if it is present also, it is not properly developed. Is it clear? And next, the flowers. Usually, if I am going to consider the flowers, anemophilous flowers, they are very, very small and inconspicuous. Inconspicuous means not having any parts visibly seen. Okay, the flowers are normally small, inconspicuous, and the flowers are not scented. It means that they will not give any good smell when they bloom, and the flowers are generally dull and they are not brightly colored. So the flowers are colorless. Okay, and they also do not possess or produce any nectar. So this clearly indicates these characters like a small, non-scented, colorless, and with no nectar is very clear indication that these flowers are not attracted by insects. Okay, generally insects do not visit this plant, so they show the characters like the flowers are very small, they are not scented, they are colorless and without nectar. So these flowers are pollinated by wind. Okay, and apart from that, the stamens are numerous. What is the meaning of stamen? Stamen is nothing but androecium. Group of stamens form androecium. So that stamens are numerous. Numerous means very large in number, and all the stamens possess a very long filament, and the anther bud is protruding outside. So for what purpose the anther is protruding outside? So that wind can directly act on them and can break the anther wall and release the pollen grains. And moreover, these plants require large quantity of pollen grains. Why? Because during the transit means transmission, what may happen? Large amount of pollen grains are generally wasted in the process. So what happens? These flowers possess a very large quantity of pollen grains, so that majority of the pollen grain, if it is wasted also, a small quantity will reach the stigma of a female flower. Okay, so stamens are numerous and are with a very long filament, and anthers will have a very large quantity of pollen grains. That is a value-based question what I gave justification. So why should anemophilous flower possess large amount of pollen grains? Because during the transit, majority of the pollen grains will get wasted. So they possess large quantity of pollen grains. And very important, as more pollen grains are produced, the female part, that is the stigma, gynoecium of the flower, also shows some modification, like the stigmas are large, protruding and highly branched. So if I am going to take a flower, the stigma will be protruding outside, so that whenever the pollen grain is going by the air, they can be easily caught by the stigmas. Okay, so stigmas are large and protruding. Let me again say the characters. What all characters we have discussed? If it is an anemophilous flower, it shows a catkin or a spike inflorescence and are usually pendulous in nature. And inflorescence axis is always found just above the level of the leaves, and the perianth is normally absent, and flowers are very small without any color and no scent and no nectar, clearly stating that they are not meant for insect pollination. And stamens are usually large with very long filament, and anthers will produce large quantity of pollen grains, and stigmas are usually highly branched and protruding outside the flowers, so that they can easily trap the flying pollen grains. Is it clear? Any doubt on that? And with this category, we are going to learn one special example. That is, the example is our maize plant. Okay, so we are going to learn the maize plant. I hope you are able to see a picture now on the screen. Able to see the picture? Yes? No? You are not able to see? Okay. You are only able to see the presentation there. Okay. So the example what we are going to discuss is our maize plant. Maize plant is called as what? Maize plant is called as Maize plant is called as Z maize. So maize plant is called as Z maize. What we are going to discuss for this category, Z maize pollination. Okay, so what happens in the plant Z maize? Okay, if I am going to take a plant Z maize, it will have a male flower and a female flower together because it is a monoecious plant. What's the meaning of the word monoecious plant? Monoecious means having both male flowers and female flowers on the same plant is called as monoecious plant. Okay, so this Z maize or the corn, what you generally eat as a sweet corn. Okay, so that plant is called the Z maize plant, and this plant is a monoecious plant, and the male flowers are usually called as tassel and are born on the tip of the plant. So if I'm going to take a tassel, it is usually born on the tip. Born means present. And the female flower is called as cob. The corn what we consume is called as a cob. When it is in the young stage, it has a very coiled stigma and stem which is called as a silk. If you happen to see a corn, sweet corn, you see a lot of thread-like structures hanging on the outer side. Have you seen or not? Have you seen on the corn? So those hanging structures are called as silk. Silk is nothing but the stigma and style of the female part. Okay, so it is hanging outside, and the whole inflorescence is seen outside the leaf, on the above the level of the leaf. What happens during wind? The tassel is a male flower which has been hanging on the outer side, will break open and releases all the pollen grains which are just received by the female flowers or the cob present on the lower surface of the plant. Tassels are found on the tip, I said, and the female flowers are found at the base. Okay, what happens during a transit? When the male flowers tassels break, they will give out all the pollen grains in the downward direction, and these pollen grains are trapped by the cob, that is the silk of the cob, and thus they complete the process called as pollination. Is it clear? So during the transit, that is when the wind is going to strike the tassel, what happens? The male flowers will break and they will release all the pollen grains, and the pollen grains will fall directly downwards, and the downward position who has been placed? The female flower, which is called as cob, has been placed. Okay, so what happens? The cob will gather all those pollen grains with the help of the silk, and they will complete the process called as pollination. Is it clear? Any doubt on that? Let me again say, so one of the classical example of anemophilous plant is our Z maize. Z maize is nothing but the corn plant. Okay, it is a monoecious plant as it possesses both male and female inflorescence on the same plant, and usually the male flowers are called as tassels, are born at the tip, are present at the tip of the plant, whereas the female flower cob is present at the base of the flower, and the female flower possesses a highly coiled stigma which is called as the silk. And what happens when wind is going to strike the plant? What happens? The tassel breaks and gives out all the pollen grains, and these pollen grains are directly received by the silk of the cob, and thus completes the process called as pollination. Anybody with any doubt on this part? Anybody got any doubt? So I want you to make a quick note now, okay, so that you will not miss any point for me. Okay, so all those characters has been clearly given on a textbook, so you're not going to write the characters for me for what are the characters of an anemophilous flower, because that is a 5-mark question for us. So what you have to do is quickly note down the example is Z maize. Z maize is the example. Male flowers are called as tassel and female flowers are called as cob, and stigma is called as silk. And what happens when wind strikes the flower? The tassel breaks, releases the pollen grains which are received by the silk of the female flower, and completes pollination. Is that clear? And we'll go for the next one, that is hydrophily. So next, pollination by water is called as hydrophily. Pollination by water is called as what? Hydrophily. And the classical example is Vallisneria and Hydrilla. I have not quoted the example of lotus and lily. Yes or no? The common aquatic plant what we generally describe is lotus and lily, but lotus and lily are pollinated by insect. So they are zoophilies and not hydrophily. So make it very clear. So those plants which are floating on the surface of the water bodies are generally pollinated by wind and insect only. And those plants which are found inside the water, submerged plants, are alone pollinated by water. So they are called as hydrophilous plant. So they will ask a 1 mark like that. Okay, so lotus and lily are example of hydrophily means what is the answer? It is false. Okay, lotus and lily are example for zoophily. Okay, but who is example for hydrophily for us? Vallisneria and hydrilla, because they're submerged plants. Okay, so if I'm going to take a hydrophilous plant, I have two different categories of hydrophilous plant. One is called as under the water submerged plants, and other is the free floating submerged plants. We have categories on it. Okay, some of the plants like Vallisneria and hydrilla are found floating in the middle of the water. They are not 100% submerged plants. Okay, but we have something called the Zostera, which is 100% buried inside the water. There is a plant called the Zostera, which is 100% buried inside the water. Okay, so here first we are going to, based on that location where it has been present, whether it is 100% submerged or partially submerged plant, we divide the pollination of hydrophily, that is pollination by water, into two types. One is called as epihydrophily and other is called as hypohydrophily. So hydrophily is of two types. One is called as epihydrophily and the other is called as hypohydrophily. Okay, and the very important point to be noted on this region is that the pollen grains, that is generally hydrophilous pollen grains, are covered with a sticky outer covering called as mucilage layer. Mucilage layer means the outer sticky coat. Okay, so that when water is going to get wet on the pollen grain also, the pollen grain will not generally get spoiled. As we very well know, if you're going to put a seed in the water or if you're going to keep your hand in the water, after some time you can feel a difference on the texture of the seed or whatever it may, because water will diffuse into the seeds. Yes or no? Same way, since the pollen grains are always floating on the water, they may get easily wetted by the water. So in order to protect them from not getting wet, the pollen grains are surrounded with the sticky outer covering, which is called as mucilage layer. So that's a very important point to be noted. So pollens are covered with the mucilage layer to protect themselves from getting wet or destroyed by water current. Okay, the two different kinds of hydrophily are epihydrophily and other is called as hypohydrophily. What are the two different kinds of hydrophily? First one is called as epihydrophily and second is called as hypohydrophily. What is this epihydrophily? Epi means on the surface of water. Epi will take place on the surface of water. Okay, so if one of the example what we are going to learn for epihydrophily is Vallisneria spiralis. So we are going to learn how Vallisneria spiralis will take up its pollination. So Vallisneria is a plant which is a dioecious in nature. What's the meaning of dioecious? I can see a male plant and a female plant separately. Okay, so such a plant is called as dioecious plant. And if I'm going to consider this, the male plant is separate and female plant is separate. And usually we see the plant like this. See, so if it is a water plant, it is usually having a long stick, leaves like this. So all the leaves are spirally coiled. So they are usually coiled like this and they are not having any small leaflets on them. And male plants are usually born at the base of the plant. Because it is a submerged plant, I said it is fixed at the base of the soil. So male plants are formed at the base, and what happens after the flowers have been bloomed, the male flowers start floating on the surface of water. They will start floating on the surface of water. But if I'm going to take a female plant, it is entirely different than that of the male plant. In the female plant, what happens? This flowers are not like this, but instead of that, the inflorescence axis is highly coiled like this, and the flower is having a cup-shaped structure at the tip. See, inflorescence axis is coiled in nature. So I can see a highly coiled inflorescence axis, and the tip of the flower inflorescence bears a cup-shaped structure. At the time of breeding or time of pollination, what happens? This coiled structure will expand and will uncoil, or it will expand, and the flowers will be seen. It will start moving up to the tip of the surface of the water body. So the coils will uncoil and the flowers are pushed to the top of the water surface. This happens during the breeding season. So now my pollen grains are floating on the surface of water, yes or no? And the inflorescence axis is in the shape of a cup. So what happens? Whenever the pollen grains comes in contact with the inflorescence axis, they will get firmly fixed inside them, and thus pollination gets completed. Is that clear? Let me again say, in Vallisneria spiralis, male plant and female plant are separate. Male plant will produce the pollen grains which will float on the surface of the water. So male flowers can be seen floating on the surface of water, whereas female flowers will have a long coiled inflorescence axis. What happens at the time of pollination? The coiled inflorescence axis will uncoil and it will be pushed on to the surface of the water. And the tip of the inflorescence axis possesses a cup-shaped structure. And this cup-shaped structure is meant for attracting the pollen grain. And what happens? Whenever the pollen grain is floating on the surface of the water, they get fixed inside the cup-shaped inflorescence, and thus pollination gets completed in the category of our Vallisneria spiralis. And it is example for what kind of pollination? Epihydrophily pollination. It is epihydrophily. Is it clear? Any doubt on that? And what happens once if the pollen grain has been fixed on this tip, immediately the inflorescence axis will again form coiled structure, and the flower will come inside the water. So that indicates that pollination has been completed. Is it clear? So what happens once the pollination is completed? They will again form a coiled inflorescence axis, and the flowers are pulled inside for further developmental process. Is that clear? Is that clear? Any doubt on that part? Let me again say one more time. So hydrophily is a pollination by water, and normally the pollen grains are covered with the outer covering called as mucilaginous layer to protect themselves from getting wet. And we have two different kinds of hydrophily. One is called epihydrophily and other is called as hypohydrophily. Epihydrophily is usually seen with the plants like Vallisneria, which are partially submerged plants. I can see the inflorescence axis floating on the surface. So it is a dioecious plant. And what happens? The male flower will produce the inflorescence, and the flowers are allowed to float on the surface of the water. Whereas in the case of female flower, what happens? It has a highly coiled inflorescence axis, and the tip of the flower possesses a cup-shaped structure meant for attracting the pollen grains. Okay. And what happens during the time of transit? During the time of transit, the pollen grains will stick onto the surface of the cup shape. That is, this coiled structure will uncoil, and the inflorescence axis will go to the top. And from there, what happens? The male flowers will stick inside the cup-shaped structure, and pollination gets completed. And the last category on that is our hypohydrophily. So hypohydrophily is a type of a pollination seen in the plants which are found 100% inside the water. Okay, so example for that is Zostera. So best example for our hypohydrophily is Zostera, which is found 100% completely immersed inside the water. Okay, and meanwhile, we'll just say what it is. Hypohydrophily is a plant that has been completely submerged. So as I said, it is a partially submerged plant, and it is a completely submerged plant. And this completely submerged plant is our Zostera, where hypohydrophily will take place, where the flowers are pollinated inside the water. So they will not have any special adaptation or any other modifications will not be seen. So they can be easily pollinated. And I will show the picture of the corn. Now you are able to see the structure of a Z-maize plant. Able to see a Z-maize plant? Yes. Z-maize plant, as I said, the tassel is born at the tip, I said. So it is at the tip. Okay. And this is a cob. So this is a cob. Okay. So female flower is called as a cob, I said. And the tip of the cob is having a small hair-like structure, which is called as what? Silk. The name is silk, I said. Okay. It is called as silk. So they have pointed here, it is called as a silk. Okay. So whenever the flower, that is whenever the wind is going to touch this tassel, immediately what happens? The anthers will break and the pollen grains are given off, which are caught by the silk of the tassel, that is cob, and pollination gets completed and cones are formed. That is pollination with our what is that plant called? Zea mays. Zea mays is nothing but corn plant. Okay, so that is a category. And last category is our zoophily. So anyway, zoophily with the introduction only we are going to start. So it is zoophily. Zoophily is a type of pollination completed by zoophily is a pollination done by our insects, animals, or whatever it may be. So with the zoophily, so the first point to be noted on that is zoophily is a pollination by insects and animals. Generally speaking, we have different categories of zoophily. First one is called as ornithophily, that is pollination by birds. So today I am going to just say the names only. So pollination by bird is called as ornithophily. Okay. Then pollination by bat is called as chiropterophily. It is called as what? Chiropterophily. And pollination by slugs and snails, aquatic animal, means it is called as malacophily. All those words tomorrow we will display and we will learn on it. Okay, it is called as malacophily. And last is our most familiar word called as entomophily, pollination by insects. Okay, so we know in the case of ornithophily, certain birds like hummingbirds are very much involved in pollination, and in order to help them in the pollination, what happens? The flowers are usually tubular in nature. What is the meaning of tubular? Having a long bell-like structure, like amplifier. They will look. Okay, so they will have a very long stigma, so that the birds can directly enter into the flower and they can suck the nectar. But the flowers have to be very, very tough in nature. Why? Because the birds are generally very, very rough in nature. Yes or no? They will go into the flower with a great force and they will try to tear and break the flower. So the flowers are generally very tough and hard, so that the birds can directly enter into them and they can suck the nectar. And meanwhile, while sucking the nectar, they will also suck the pollen grains and they will help in pollination. Okay, so those characters we are going to discuss in that. And next one is chiropterophily. As I said, it is a pollination by bat, and it is a very, very remote form of a pollination, usually seen in the plants like Cagelia africana. That is the name of a plant which is normally pollinated by our bat, called as Cagelia africana. Okay, and malacophily means pollination by slug and snail. That is usually an aquatic organism which helps in pollination. And usually lemna. Lemna is the name of a plant that will help in pollination of aquatic, that is snails. Snails are involved in pollination of lemna. And last is our entomophily. So we got a broad category of insects which are involved in entomophily. Okay, so some of the important entomophilous